What's going on, everybody? Happy Super Bowl Sunday. Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Hope your weekend has been going well. Hope today is even better. It should be an absolutely phenomenal Super Bowl. I cannot wait. I think these two teams match up so incredibly well. And just this is it, right? This is the last game of the season and everything's on the line. You're hoping that you have two teams that can match up all against each other and you can just have a downright battle for the ultimate glory of winning a Super Bowl. And I think we're honestly going to get that. And I feel like we sort of deserve it, right? Like, it hasn't been the greatest run up. I think wild card weekend was pretty good. We had some okay games here and there, but like, this season just feels like it deserves a cherry on the top with just an absolute gem of a game between the Eagles and the Chiefs. Before I get there, not to be a sort of damper on what should be a fun football Sunday with Chiefs and Eagles going head to head, there are some storylines here. There's some players here that have not necessarily ties to the Packers, but there's certainly some interesting what ifs when it comes to the Packers. And I want to start there, and then I'll kind of get through a quick preview of today's game. But I want to start out with Jalen Hurts, because Jalen Hurts is not necessarily a what if for the Packers. You could go in a couple different directions there, but Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love, same draft class, right? And I think this, if you look at it from the Packers standpoint, right? Jalen Hurts is such a phenomenal example of just what Green Bay was trying to accomplish, right? What if I told you, let's just remember, Jalen Hurts is bringing his team to the Super Bowl, has a chance to win it, was the runner-up in the MVP voting this year. What if Green Bay had gone from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to this version of Jalen Hurts? The idea, the concept in a vacuum of that type of progression is exactly what Green Bay was trying to accomplish, exactly what Brian Gutekunst was trying to accomplish. They were trying to have their cake, and they were trying to eat it too. They wanted that last run with Aaron Rodgers, hopefully resulting in a Super Bowl, Aaron walking off into the sunset, and then taking that next step with a quarterback that would be ready basically at exactly this right time, with a cheap contract, with the opportunity to move into the next era with a phenomenal young quarterback. Jalen Hurts for the Philadelphia Eagles right now, who is taken after Jordan Love, it should be noted, in the exact same draft, is exactly what Green Bay was trying to accomplish when they selected Jordan Love. Now, this isn't a commentary on Jordan Love, number one. Jordan Love is still a lottery ticket. And you could make a very strong argument that if Jalen Hurts was in Jordan Love's position, that we wouldn't even know if Jalen Hurts was this good, right? And he might not even be this good, because what did it take for Jalen Hurts to get this good? It took him playing in games over the last couple seasons and actually having opportunities to get to go out on the field, learn from his mistakes, grow from the snaps that he was getting out on the field to become the quarterback that he is right now and leading his team to a opportunity at a Super Bowl trophy. So we wouldn't necessarily know that Jalen Hurts would be that quarterback even if they did draft him instead of Jordan Love, or even if Jordan Love might be that same thing, right? Jordan Love is still a lottery ticket. So this is not a commentary on like Jordan Love. It's also not a commentary on like, oh, the Packers, they should have taken Jalen Hurts instead of Jordan Love. You could argue that right now, right? Like with the benefit of hindsight, that if you had the choice right now between Jalen Hurts and Jordan Love, I'm not sure there's many people in the world that would say Jordan Love would be their choice in that given situation. But nobody, and I mean nobody, was talking about Jalen Hurts being a bottom of the first round or even first round draft pick in any capacity, right? Even when the Eagles took him in the middle to late second round, there was some buzz of like, hey, did they just overdraft Jalen Hurts? So it's not to say that Green Bay should have known and picked Jalen Hurts at the end of round one. You could go out of your way and say, what if they took T. Higgins at the end of round one, right? And then instead of moving up in round one for Love, could they have moved up in with their second round pick from A.J. Dillon using their third round pick to go in and get Jalen Hurts at that point? Yeah, they probably could have. There was a trade right in front of where Jalen Hurts was taken that Green Bay probably could have done something similar if they just upped the ante a little bit. So yeah, I think that's absolutely within the realm of possibility. That's using a lot of hindsight in that situation to know that's of course exactly what they should have done. So all of this is to say, in concept, it's very clear and easy to see what Brian Gutekunst was trying to accomplish. The execution on that concept is two totally different stories. And I want to go back to an article that I wrote the day, or really the day of the first round pick. It published on Friday after they selected Jordan Love, but I wrote it Thursday night right after the draft had happened, right after they selected Jordan Love. And what I wrote was, it was almost impossible in any scenario for this Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love transition to work. And you could argue it was close, right? You could argue that had they won the Super Bowl in 2020, or in 2020 for sure, or in 2021, had they won one of those Super Bowls and then get the motherlode offer from the Broncos and take in that trade from the Broncos and then have the quarterback that's ready to go at that point, there maybe was a thin line that they could walk there, that they maybe could have made this work. Jordan Love on his contract this coming year in 2023, let's just say he's the starter, right, is $3.94 million. And if he is ready to go, if he is ready to be a legitimate starter in the league, that's exactly what you want, right? You want 1 or 2 years, which is exactly what the Philadelphia Eagles are getting with Jalen Hurts right now. They got Jalen Hurts on a super cheap contract, even cheaper than Jordan Love's because he was a second round pick, right? They have a super cheap contract right now, and they have a super cheap contract in 2023 that they are going to have this window open because they can go out and get an A.J. Brown and pay all of these players and go out and get a bunch of free agents and do everything that they have done basically to make this team super talented because they are paying Jalen Hurts almost no money, just like Jordan Love is basically getting paid, especially for a starting quarterback right now. The issue is that even if that transition takes place from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love this offseason, and even if you have this opportunity with Jordan Love making only $3.94 million and you can build out your team, your Aaron Rodgers salary cap hit's going to come in somewhere between 30 and 40 million. So it's basically like you're still paying your starting quarterbacks 33, 43 million, depending on what route they take with Aaron Rodgers' contract. Should he be traded or should he retire? So you don't have the benefit. The biggest benefit, the biggest cheat code right now in the NFL is if you can get that young quarterback still on a cheap contract and build your team up around him, that's the best way to go about things. That's exactly what we're seeing with Jalen Hurts. That's what could have been with Jordan Love if the execution was right. But because of the timeline and quite frankly, because Aaron Rodgers outplayed what I think the expectations were after they drafted Jordan Love, the timeline got messy. And in the interim, the Jordan Love draft pick, and this is exactly what I wrote the night of the draft, the Jordan Love draft pick does nothing to help the Aaron Rodgers window, the Aaron Rodgers timeline. If that's a T. Higgins, if that's a Michael Pittman, that changes things, right? That could have helped Green Bay, and maybe it gets them over the hump in 2020 or 2021. Maybe it doesn't, but maybe it does. It gives you a better chance to win a Super Bowl in the Aaron Rodgers window. Meanwhile, every year that Aaron Rodgers is on the team, when Jordan Love is on the team, is killing the Jordan Love window. Because now you're in this no man's land, like I said, where even if there's a transition to him being the starter this year, first of all, the odds that he's going to win a Super Bowl in his first year as a starter are probably pretty slim. There's a learning curve that goes into this, right? So even if you had the opportunity at just $3 million to build this team around him, to expect him to go out and be your Super Bowl leading quarterback in year one as a starter is a pretty big ask. Meanwhile, you don't even have the ability to play with that $3 million because Aaron Rodgers is still taking up the vast majority of your salary cap space. And if you go into next year, now you've got the whole fifth year option situation, which Green Bay may or may not pick up, and that complicates things. And that's exactly, again, what I wrote the day of the draft when they drafted Jordan Love is the window or the tiniest of tightest of keyholes to fit this through, that it would have worked, where Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers coexisting together, and you actually finish out the Aaron Rodgers era strong, or can start the Jordan Love era strong, was almost minuscule to non-existent. And like I said, this whole Jalen Hurts situation shows exactly the concept that they were trying to accomplish. Imagine, I'm going to say it one more time. Imagine if right now, as Aaron Rodgers makes this decision of whether or not he wants to be traded or whether he wants to retire, imagine if Green Bay is going from Favre to Rodgers to this version of Jalen Hurts. Holy hell. How amazing would that be? And maybe that's still the case with Jordan Love. And maybe there's still a window that they got this right. But the best universe where you are paying Jordan Love no money and he's really, really good is gone. It's over with. It can't happen. You lost out on the biggest potential benefit of that timeline. And the same thing with Aaron Rodgers. If you really wanted to go all in and open up that last window with Aaron Rodgers, that's gone. It's over. It's done with. And you lost an opportunity because you spent a first round pick plus traded up using additional picks to get Jordan Love, which did nothing, absolutely nothing to help the Aaron Rodgers timeline. So this is an entire, as we watch Jalen Hurts, it's a good reminder of, what could have been if the quarterback pick in that draft went right, and maybe they course correct in a couple different ways. If Jordan Love was, ready a little bit earlier, maybe they take advantage of that Denver Broncos trade last year. But now you're in this weird, bizarro no man's land where the Jordan Love window is still completely unknown. And even if you want it to be known, even if it is Jordan Love's time, you missed out on those key years where he was not making any money. And you certainly did nothing to help yourself with the Aaron Rodgers window by taking Jordan Love either. So it is a cautionary tale, and it's something worth remembering as we watch Jalen Hurts lead his team to potentially a Super Bowl trophy, being in the same draft class as Jordan Love. And it is fair, by the way, if you are going to be aggressive in moving up for a quarterback in a draft when you still have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback and you're going to move up, you better as heck make sure that you got the right guy, and the optics on it are going to be so much worse if Jalen Hurts wins this Super Bowl and Jordan Love goes on to do nothing, that they went up and aggressively moved for a quarterback when Aaron Rodgers was still on the roster, and the next quarterback taken in the second round ended up being far better than the guy they went up and traded for. There's certainly going to be some not only bad optics, but that's going to be something that's remembered for a long time as a massive mistake for this Green Bay Packers organization. And that's where I wanted to go with a couple of these other scenarios. You know a couple of these already. The Creed Humphrey versus Josh Myers. Creed Humphrey taking one pick after Josh Myers. Creed Humphrey is arguably, and Kelsey in this game for the Eagles is probably Jason Kelsey is probably the best center in the league, but Creed Humphrey in the conversation, and if he's not number one, he's number two, right? I'll say this: the Kansas City Chiefs, in my opinion, if things are swapped and they have Josh Myers and the Packers have Creed Humphrey, the Chiefs are not in this Super Bowl. I don't think the Packers are certainly in this Super Bowl because of Creed Humphrey. They're in the playoffs this year because they have Creed Humphrey instead of Josh Myers. Unquestionably, Creed Humphrey would have, at minimum, won them another game this year. At minimum. The difference between arguably the best center in the league and maybe the most disappointing center in the league is huge. And what they would have been able to accomplish in the running game, protecting Aaron Rodgers, not having Rodgers have these constant miscommunications with Josh Myers, and just all of it would have been a night and day difference. And like I said, I don't think the Chiefs are in this Super Bowl, or at least their odds of winning the Super Bowl go down exponentially if that's Josh Myers instead of Creed Humphrey. And the Packers' opportunity these last couple seasons would have gone up exponentially. They probably beat San Francisco last year, in all honesty. I think they beat the 49ers last year in that divisional round if they have Creed Humphrey instead of Josh Myers. That's how much I think of Creed Humphrey. And this is not like hindsight's 2020. Almost every draft pundit, not that draft pundits are the be-all, end-all of anything, but almost, I don't know a single draft pundit that had Josh Myers ahead of Creed Humphrey. Creed Humphrey was considered a late first round pick. Josh Myers was considered a fringe second, third round day two guy. And somehow Myers got taken ahead of Humphrey, who ended up somehow going end of round two. And a lot of teams have certainly a lot of regret for not taking Creed Humphrey at some point before the Chiefs did. But man, to take a center one pick before that ends up being right now like exponentially worse than Creed Humphrey, that is a major mishap by the Green Bay Packers in the front office. Another one, maybe one that's not talked about quite as much, but one that's definitely one of interest as well, is this past season. Now, George Karlaftis is a player that a lot of people loved, myself included. It's a player that I would have taken instead of Devontae Wyatt. I said it before the draft. I know Justice Mosqueda was huge on the George Karlaftis train and wanted him instead of really either of the Packers, first round picks. And a lot of people really like George Karlaftis in this draft. Now, I will say, I think George Karlaftis' impact overall has been a little bit overstated. He's been really good for a rookie. I don't think he's been quite as good as some of the credit that he gets, but He led all rookies in pressures this year, and he's a big reason why this Chiefs team has played as well as they have throughout the course of the season. And, just his impact as a rookie. Is he their biggest impact rookie? No. Is he their biggest impact rookie even on defense? No. But he's only 21 years old, and I'll say it one more time, led the NFL in pressures for rookies this season. Meanwhile, Devonte Wyatt hardly got on the field. Different positions, unquestionably, but man, imagine if, you had Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary, and George Karlaftis going into this season. I don't think it would have changed anything with them picking, Kingsley Enagbare later in the draft. I think they still go out and get him. And now imagine a edge rusher group going into this season of Karlaftis and Enagbare, Preston Smith, and Rashawn Gary. My goodness, that is a really strong future. And maybe even if they move on from Preston Smith in that situation, Enagbare, Karlaftis, and Rashawn Gary is a great way to start an edge rusher group from just a youth and talent standpoint. And like I said, Karlaftis only 21 years in age, Devonte Wyatt 24. So the bigger impact player by far, only 21 years old, and the guy that could barely get on the field was 24. That's another questionable decision. Another key player in this game, MVS. Now, I think Green Bay made the right decision to let MVS go in a different direction. I think with the contract that he got in Kansas City, I would not have been in favor of Green Bay bringing MVS back on that one-year deal. I think it's worked out for KC. I don't think they've quite got their return on investment on the contract that they gave him, but it's close. And he has certainly helped them, especially this past game. And the past game, the AFC Championship, probably was worth it in and of itself for the contract that they gave him. But it just goes to show you, I guarantee you, Green Bay would have loved to have kept MVS moving on from Davante Adams to have a veteran in that room. But they just didn't have the salary. For all of those who are saying salary cap is fake, you can sign any players that you want, you can just continue to push money out. They didn't have money for MVS. They could not have signed MVS at the deal that he got last year. And I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure they would have liked to have him back. And go back to last year. Imagine if you got Watson and MVS on the outside, streaking down the field, putting a ton of pressure on opposing defenses. Yeah, that's going to open things up for a lot of your receivers, tight ends, running backs underneath in ways that they just didn't have those type of players. And while, Christian Watson was struggling with the injuries early in the year, imagine if they still had MVS at that standpoint. And that's why you have to be very careful with how you operate under the salary cap, because there does come a point where you just run out of money in the banana stand, and it's not fake. It is legitimate. They didn't have the money to keep him. And like I said, I think at the number he got, I was in favor, and I think it was the right move to let him go. But if the money is fake, if it's all there, you can go spend as much as you want. Yeah, probably bringing MVS would have been the right move. They just didn't have the money or funds to do so. And meanwhile, we can take a look at this wide receiver group in another way, right? Because the Chiefs and Packers are a very interesting case study in moving on from a major weapon this season. Tyreek Hill goes to the Dolphins in a trade. Devontae Adams goes to the Raiders in the trade. What do both teams do? The Packers, who do not have a Travis Kelce, by the way. Kelce's still on the Chiefs roster. Green Bay does not have that guy. Sticks with Robert Tonyan at tight end and Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb at wide receiver. They go out and get rookies. Christian Watson, who's going to turn out extremely well. Romeo Doubs, Samori Toure, and they go out and get a cheap veteran in Sammy Watkins. Meanwhile, the Chiefs, who still have Travis Kelce, mind you, they go out and get Juju Smith-Schuster. They go out and get MVS. They trade for Kadarius Toney, and they take a wide receiver in the second round. They didn't just rely upon a second round wide receiver. They went out and they got 3 veterans in Toney, MVS, and Juju Smith-Schuster. So, and like you said, they still had Travis Kelce at tight end, something Green Bay didn't have the luxury of at that point. So that's another just, difference in how some of these teams have been built. And just, this is all to show you how thin the margin is. If Green Bay just hits on a couple of these different things, we could be talking about a very different Green Bay Packers team. Juan Thornhill, safety for the Chiefs, right? Better player than Darnell Savage. Darnell Savage and Juan Thornhill, same draft class. Safeties from the same class. The Chiefs get Thornhill at the end of round 2, and he's a better player than Savage, who the Packers traded up for into round 1 to go and get. Those are things that matter. The line in the NFL is extremely thin, and if you continue to make mistakes like that, it's going to make things really hard for you in the long run to be super successful. Josh Jackson, the Packers corner at pick 45, taken 4 picks before Dallas Goedert at pick 49. And this is, again, Marcus Eversole, I know, was begging the Packers to take Dallas Goedert at pick 45 in the second round. And to be clear, there was almost nobody, and I mean almost nobody, who was upset by the Josh Jackson pick. In fact, a lot of people in the first round wanted the Packers to take Josh Jackson at some point in the first round. They take Jair Alexander. Some people were throwing their hands up being like, why didn't you take Josh Jackson? Then when the Packers got Josh Jackson in the second round, people were doing backflips that Green Bay got Josh Jackson in the second round. So it's not to say that like everyone was like, oh my God, they screwed up and picked Josh Jackson over Dallas Goedert, but they picked Josh Jackson over Dallas Goedert, and Goedert has gone on to have a phenomenal career in Philly and is a huge part of their offense. Josh Jackson, not so much, right? It did not turn out in any way for the Green Bay Packers. And to be abundantly clear, we could do a lot of this with every team, every single year, in every single draft. And it should also be pointed out that it goes the other way too. I will abundantly admit, in the Rashawn Gary draft, with pick 12 in that draft, did not want Rashawn Gary, which is well documented from that draft. And the player that I wanted, Philadelphia Eagles left tackle, backup left tackle, I might add, Andre Dillard. I loved Andre Dillard in that draft. Andre Dillard has done absolutely nothing for the most part. He's been a reliable backup left tackle, right tackle, left guard. Especially this season, he's had some injury issues early in his career. Didn't get on the field all that much. But my goodness, like, Gary is here and Dillard is like not even remotely close, right? So it does go both ways, and Brian Gutekunst has certainly made some right decisions along the way as well. But all of this is just to show you that being a general manager in the NFL, the line is so incredibly thin. And some of these decisions that the Eagles and the Chiefs got right, the Creed Humphrey pick, the Dallas Goedert pick, sticking in the second round and taking Jalen Hurts, sticking in the second round and taking Juan Thornhill instead of going aggressively up to get a Darnell Savage, taking George Karlaftis at the end of round one. And they didn't have the opportunity to draft Devontae Wyatt because the Packers took him ahead of time, but just staying there and taking him, reloading your wide receiver group instead of, just relying on some younger players like the Packers did and when they didn't have a Travis Kelce. Those things are the difference between teams playing in the Super Bowl and a team that was 8-9 and on the outside of the playoffs looking in. Not everything's apples to apples, but as we watch some of these really key players in these two teams that are competing for a Super Bowl, it's fair to say that there was some lost opportunity for the Packers along the way, and that it's going to take a little bit of time, effort, and energy from Brian Gutekunst in this front office to kind of make up for some of these missteps that had happened along the way. All right. Let's get to previewing the Super Bowl. This is going to be some low-hanging fruit today, just full transparency. I would give you 13, 15, 20 things if I thought those were the things that ultimately mattered in this game, but I don't want to overcomplicate this game. I'll start by saying I think these are two phenomenal football teams. I think this game could go either way. I expect it to be close. I hope it's close. I hope it's just a beat-down, drag-em-out brawl, Donnybrook, whatever Jim Ross from AEW and WWE wants to call it, a slobber knocker. I hope it's just a phenomenal fight, like legitimately. These two teams have the ability to be so physical, so talented, and just really strong football teams on both sides of the ball that, like I said, I think this can go either way. I think it's a really good game. But I do think there are a handful of things that are ultimately going to decide this game. And 1A on my list is the thing that I'm going to be watching immediately and that I really think decides this game. Go back to Buccaneers Chiefs from a couple years ago, Super Bowl. Reminder, the Bucs won that game 31-9 over the Chiefs. Go back and watch. Patrick Mahomes couldn't do anything in that game because his offensive line could not hang against the Buccaneers defensive front. The Buccaneers defensive front just ate the Chiefs offensive line for lunch, and it was over before the game started. They just never had a chance. Even Patrick Mahomes, with all of his insane ability, with Tyreek Hill at wide receiver, Travis Kelce at tight end, and Mahomes being Mahomes, could not make anything happen. 9 points for a Chiefs offense. 9 points. And the Buccaneers defensive front just dominated the Chiefs O-line, and it was over. I'm watching the Eagles defensive front versus the Chiefs offensive line in this game. 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. That is my matchup I'm watching. Because the Eagles defensive front is a cheat code. Now, the Chiefs offensive line is so much better than it was 2 years ago. Orlando Brown, Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, who we've talked about, Trey Smith, Andrew Wiley, very good offensive line. Not perfect, but really good, really, really good offensive line. And if they can hold up against this Eagles pass rush, which is a legitimate cheat code, Josh Sweat, Hassan, I'm going to like just take this in for a second. Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave. Javon Hargrave and Josh Sweat are maybe the two of the most underrated players in the league. Robert Quinn, Milton Williams, first round pick from this year, Jordan Davis from Georgia, Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph. That is 10 deep. All right, let's just say that their best four. All right, let's say their best four are like the four that they use the most. We'll go Brandon Graham over Josh Sweat just based off of longevity, right? We'll say Hassan Reddick and Brandon Graham on the edge with Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave on the defensive at the defensive tackle spots. That front four is if they had four Dean Lowry's as and the Tyler Lancasters and like the four random Packers backups backing them up, is an insanely good defensive line. An insanely good defensive line. Now, the next group up, Robert Quinn, all right, Milton Williams, Jordan Davis, and Josh Sweat. That group right there is arguably a Super Bowl caliber defensive. That's their second line, is arguably a Super Bowl caliber defensive line. And they still have Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph, who I haven't even labeled in their top 8 yet. That is incredible. All right. And that is a huge reason why they've been so successful and they can get so much pressure. A legitimate 10-man rotation along the defensive line that is so just impressive, dominant, physical. They can hold up in the run. They can get after the quarterback. That's where this game starts and ends for me. Can the Chiefs be good enough against it? That Travis Kelce and this wide receiver group, and more importantly, Patrick Mahomes, can do enough damage to put enough points up and make this a real legitimate game. Because if the Eagles defensive front has their way, and like I said, this Eagles front is a legit NFL cheat code. You just can't put together pass rush groups as good as this Eagles group is. And if they can, inflict their will the way that they have been capable of doing all season long, to me, it's Eagles. It's Eagles easy. So, like I said, Chiefs offensive line much better than the one 2 years ago against the Buccaneers. But if Mahomes can't be Mahomes, this is going to be a Eagles game in every facet of the game, because that group can wreck any team at any time in any game, whether it's a Super Bowl or not. I want to see how the Chiefs O-line holds up against that group. And if they do, all right, now everything swings back in favor of the Chiefs, in my opinion. Next up is, even with that pass rush, even with that great defensive front, how do the Eagles handle Travis Kelce? Speaking of cheat codes, one of the best to ever do it. He is the best tight end in the game right now, in my opinion. He's just one of the absolute best weapons in the NFL, in my opinion. And if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles, I'm doing everything I can to make sure that Travis Kelce is not beating me. Make MVS beat me, make Juju Smith-Schuster beat me, make Kadarius Toney, Isaiah Pacheco, make anyone else beat me. I can't let Kelce beat me. I can't have him have his 7-catch, 95-yard, 2-touchdown performance in this game. I just can't. I got to find a way to take him away. Third and longs, red zone situations, you're not going to Travis Kelce. And I'm just, like I said, I'm making anyone else beat me. If you beat me with Travis Kelce doing nothing in the game and MVS and Juju Smith-Schuster and those guys go off, tip your cap. You know what? We took away their best player and they found a way to beat us. It is what it is, but I can't let Travis Kelce beat me. So what do the Eagles do to try to take away Travis Kelce? That's going to be number 2 on my list. Number 3 is just the quarterbacks. These are 2 special quarterbacks, in my opinion. Now, nobody's quite as special as Patrick Mahomes, but this is a potential legacy-defining game for Patrick Mahomes. Can he get his second Super Bowl win? And it's a potential legacy-defining game for Jalen Hurts. If you get one Super Bowl, especially at this age, man, you are set for a long, long time in this league and as far as your legacy goes. So this is a legacy-defining moment for both of these quarterbacks. I think they both have the ability to put the team on their back and carry their teams to a respective Super Bowl. Which one plays better? Which one can avoid the mistakes? And which one can make the big plays when their team needs it most? 2 top MVP candidates. Mahomes ended up winning it, but I'm so excited to see how these young, phenomenal Mahomes, young, whatever. He's still young when it compares to the Rodgers and the Bradys of the world. But, these 2 just uber talented quarterbacks, how do they play in these legacy-defining games for both of these quarterbacks? And then for the Eagles, we talked about not letting Travis Kelce beat you on one side. You can't let Chris Jones beat you on the other. And the Eagles' offensive line is phenomenal, just phenomenal. But so is Chris Jones. And Chris Jones versus Eagles' offensive line worth the price of admission in this game at all. If you can take your eye off the ball a little bit in this game and just watch how these Eagles offensive linemen operate against Chris Jones and company, I like the Eagles offensive line. I think they're going to be able to handle him. But if we've seen Chris Jones can just take over a game, and if he does that and makes life hell on Jalen Hurts, that changes the game quite a bit as well. So that, to me, we kind of have this really, really well-rounded team in the Philadelphia Eagles that have talent everywhere. And then you have the Chiefs, who have Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, and just some complete game wreckers, right? Like they can they can just take over the game at any moment. And that to me is Kelce and Jones, and how the Eagles handle those two weapons is going to go a long way in defining this game. And you could go on with turnovers and hidden yardage and special teams, and all of that stuff matters. But for me, this is going to be Eagles defensive front versus Chiefs O-line. How do you handle Travis Kelce? How do you handle Chris Jones? And how do these two quarterbacks play? That's what I'm going to be watching. I cannot wait. I'm going Eagles 27, Chiefs 24 in a very close, very exciting, very tight, Donnybrook slobber knocker of a game. And I'm just hoping for one of the best Super Bowls of all time with Rihanna at halftime. What more could you possibly want? I hope you enjoy the heck out of it. We've got a long off season ahead of us, so enjoy the last bit of football while we still have it, and I hope you guys enjoy your Super Bowl Sunday. I'll be right back here tomorrow with an all-new episode, breaking it down and, going over a couple other topics as well. So make sure to check it out. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.